tackling something that I think trips a lot of people up, especially in English, those really difficult conversations. Our plan is to give you some, practical ways to handle these moments a bit more smoothly, maybe with more confidence.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we're drawing from this great English learning resource that really focuses on this exact challenge.
It's so relevant, isn't it? I mean, whether it's like a tricky situation at work or maybe something personal needing to set a boundary or just getting a concern off your chest.
Right.
These conversations, they just happen. And managing them well in English, it's not just about knowing the words, it's really about feeling empowered,
Totally. Okay, so let's get into it. The source material we looked at points out something pretty obvious, but crucial. Just starting the conversation often feels like the biggest wall to climb. So what does it suggest? How can we actually kick off these tough talks without immediately making everything super tense?
Yeah, that's key. What's interesting is the focus on creating a kind of safe happening, like dipping a toe in the water first.
Okay.
It suggests using phrases that signal, hey, I need to talk about something important, but in a way that doesn't sound like an attack is coming.
Right. Like what?
Well, instead of just bluntly saying, we need to talk about this problem, maybe something gentler. Like, could we find a few minutes to chat about? Or I was hoping we could talk through. It kind of sets a more collaborative vibe from the get-go. Makes a difference in how the other person might react,
That's a really good point. It feels less like you're cornering them. Okay, so I've started. Now, the really tricky part sometimes, expressing your own feelings without, pouring gasoline on the fire. How do you do that delicately?
Exactly. It's a balancing act.
Yeah.
And the resource really emphasizes using I statements. It's a classic, but for good reason.
Can you give an example?
Sure. So instead of saying, you always ignore my ideas, which, let's be honest, immediately makes someone defensive.
Yeah, instantly.
Try framing it from your perspective. Like, I feel a bit overlooked when my suggestions aren't discussed in meetings. See the shift.
Yeah, it's about your experience, not accusing them.
Precisely. It focuses on your feeling or experience triggered by the situation, rather than assigning blame for the action itself. It makes it, just easier for the other person to hear it without immediately shutting down.
That makes a lot of sense. You're sharing, not attacking. Okay, and then there's the other side of the coin. Actually understanding where they're coming from. Especially crucial in his difficult talk. What does the resource say about asking questions effectively?
This is huge. It really drills down on active listening, but specifically asking open-ended questions.
Right, not just yes-no stuff.
Exactly. Questions that start with, what? How? Could you tell me more about? Things like, what was your thinking behind that decision? Or how did you see that situation unfolding? These types of questions invite the other person to actually explain their perspective, share their reasoning. It not only helps you genuinely understand them better, but it also makes them feel heard and valued.
Which can de-escalate things too, presumably.
Definitely. It shifts it from two people stating positions at each other to hopefully a real exchange, a dialogue.
Makes sense. Okay, so let's say you've navigated the tricky middle part, but even well-handled, difficult talks can feel, a bit draining or unfinished. How does the resource suggest we wrap things up constructively, even if there isn't a perfect solution right then?
Yeah, aiming for that positive or at least neutral close is important. The resource suggests focusing on sort of summarizing points of understanding or agreement, even small ones, maybe clarifying any next steps, if there are any. Or sometimes it's as simple as acknowledging the effort, saying something like, thanks for talking this through with me, or I appreciate you sharing your perspective.
Right, acknowledging the
It just helps prevent things from ending on a sour note, keeps that door open for future communication, even if the core issue isn't 100% resolved.
That feels really important for maintaining relationships, work or personal. Okay, finally, this is all great advice, but doing it under pressure is another thing. How does the resource suggest we actually get better at this, build that confidence?
No magic bullet here, unfortunately. The advice is pretty straightforward. Practice.
Makes sense.
Like any skill, really. Whether it's, learning guitar or a new language function, the more you do it, the less terrifying it becomes.
So how do you practice this?
The resource suggests trying out these phrases, the soft openings, the I statements in, like lower stakes situations first. Maybe even just mentally rehearsing or role-playing with a friend you trust.
Okay.
The idea is to build familiarity, almost like communication muscle memory. So when a genuinely tough conversation pops up, You feel a bit more prepared, more confident reaching for those tools.
Right, so it's less about avoiding these conversations and more about feeling equipped, having the strategies, and crucially, the confidence to actually use them. This resource seems to offer a really solid starting point, a good toolkit.
Absolutely. And that kind of leads us to a final thought for you, the listener, to mull over. Think back to a conversation you had recently that felt difficult, challenging. Now, considering what we've just talked about, the gentle start, the I feel statements, the open questions, aiming for a constructive close, how might applying even one of those techniques have shifted things? Even a small change, like how you opened it or one question you asked differently, how might that have altered the whole dynamic? Something to think about, how these small adjustments could potentially lead to much better outcomes in our communication.